Philadelphia Eagles are going to get back on track and make a playoff run in 2024. How are they going to do that on offense and defense? How do they get back on track? What needs to happen? That's what we're going to get into on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Eagles is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, who helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Louie DiBiase. One final show until the Eagles' regular season finale this Sunday, 4:30 at MetLife Stadium against the New York Giants. Doesn't feel like a very exciting game that we should dive too deep into. Of course, the Eagles still have a slim chance of winning the division if they get a win against New York and the Dallas Cowboys somehow lose to the Washington Commanders, who have more to lose if they win than if they lose, considering draft order and how they might need a quarterback of the future, depending on how you feel about Sam Howell. I think they do. So unless the Dallas Cowboys lose that game and the Eagles win against the Giants, the likelihood is the Eagles will be heading on the road for the playoffs next week in the wild card round as the 5 seed against the winner of the NFC South. So instead of, yesterday we dove deep into the Eagles-Giants matchup with Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. So if you want a preview show, we do have that for you on Crossover Thursday. You can find that on YouTube and all our podcast platforms. But today I want to get back to talking about the playoffs. A few days ago I talked about, the ideal paths, like what matchups would be the best for them to get at least back to the NFC Championship game, and got into how maybe the underdog label might help inspire this team and take the pressure off, kind of like it did for the 2017 Eagles, the 2018 Eagles, and the 2019 Eagles. I feel like when their backs were against the wall, that is when all three of those teams started to shine, and maybe that can help this football team as well. But when it comes to specific things on the field that need to happen for this team to bounce back in the postseason, right now a 1-4 stretch over the last 5 games, even if they beat the Giants, I don't feel like there's going to be anything they can do in this game against a bad team in a finale that can make you feel like, okay, the 2022 Eagles are back. No, you need to see that in the postseason. If they beat, even though it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or the New Orleans Saints or the Atlanta Falcons, it's a really bad division-winning playoff team. If they beat a playoff team by 20 or 30, right, they blow them out in the wild card round and Jalen Hurts looks dominant and the pass rush is back, that's when you can start to feel a little bit more confident that if they play the 49ers or the Cowboys or the Lions, that they can win those football games. So when it comes to specifics on the field of what needs to happen for them to do that and to make us believers again, that's what I want to get into on today's edition of the show. Segment 1, I have 3 things I think the offense needs to do to bounce back that have to happen. And then segment 2, 3 things that need to happen on defense. And then we'll round out the show. I do want to do LOE 3 one final time. Try to win you guys some money on Sunday. Hey, this game might be boring. It's going to be snowing. Maybe the Eagles backups are in. Let's at least try to win you guys some money, and I want to finish in the positives with my FanDuel bets. So we'll get into that to wrap up the show. But let's start with offense. What are 3 things the Eagles need to have happen in the playoffs on offense to turn things around? Because again, some things this year, they're just not going to fix, at least in my opinion. I mean, it's possible, but I just can't see it, right? Number 1 is the lack of talent on the second and third level of the defense. The players are who the players are. Howie Roseman, right? He let TJ Edwards go, Kazir White, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Marcus Epps. James Bradbury is a shell of who he was. Darius Slay is injured right now. Avonte Maddox should be back in the lineup for the postseason. Who you've got is who you've got. You traded for Kevin Byard. You've got Reed Blankenship. Your linebackers are not great. So that's not going to be fixed this year. The coaching, could the play calling suddenly get better in the playoffs with Brian Johnson? I guess it could. Could the in-game management of Nick Sirianni be better? Yeah, for sure. I just have little faith in this coaching staff right now. So I don't think that's going to change the road playoff path they've put themselves on. Again, it could change on Sunday if the Cowboys were to lose to Washington, but you also have to beat the Giants. Those are things that I'm not expecting to change in 2024. Here are things, though, that could spark a run if they do happen. Number 1, Jalen Hurts needs to be special again. Not just, because I feel like the last few games he's definitely bounced back. That was a terrible stretch when it comes to that Seattle game, the 49ers matchup, the Cowboys game. Like, he just was not being the difference maker he was when they were 10-1. Against the Giants and the Cardinals the last 2 weeks, I think he's been really good, and it's a nice step in the right direction, but it's not special. And he needs to be special to carry this version of the Eagles. Like last year, that Jalen Hurts that you saw against the Giants and the Cardinals with last year's team, like, you could still win playoff games that way. I mean, that's who he was against the Giants and the 49ers in the postseason, and the Eagles still boat raced both of those teams to get to the Super Bowl. This year's team, because of the issues that I'm laying out, the coaching, the lack of any sort of talent on the second, third, and third level of the defense, the way the pass rush has just been disappearing, how bad the coaches have been, you need Super Bowl 58 version of, or 57, you need Super Bowl 57 Jalen Hurts. Like, that's who you need in the playoffs. If you're going to go on the road in San Francisco or in Dallas, in Detroit, then in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Bills, like, you need 57 Super Bowl Jalen Hurts again. He needs to be like he was also this year. Like, there were times he was special this year. You need the Jalen Hurts you saw leading that comeback against the Buffalo Bills. You need the Jalen Hurts you saw against the Miami Dolphins, against the Dallas Cowboys, the middle of the year against Washington in both shootout wins. That's the guy you need, because when you look at those wins, Jalen a lot of the times had to carry a defense that was struggling, or a run game that was struggling, or bad play calling against really good football teams. So maybe you're not going to get a historic Super Bowl 57 like showing from Jalen week in and week out in the postseason, but he's got to be special. He's got to be the guy that you saw through the first 11 weeks of the season, but really specifically that stretch where they won 5 games straight in the middle of the year. He needs to be a $200 million quarterback to overcome some of these issues, because, again, with the way the defense is letting up points like it's nothing, you might need to win most of these games in shootouts. You might have to win all of these games scoring 25 to 30 plus points. So number one, on offense, Jalen Hurts needs to be special. Number two, the turnovers and penalties, they have to stop. They have to stop, because even though Jalen hasn't been special over the last couple months, or I should say month and a half, the offense is still moving the football. And you're already behind the 8 ball with Brian Johnson's scheme, the fact that the red zone offense is struggling. Like, you're moving the ball down the field, but things are stalling because you're turning the football over. You're getting all these super stupid penalties. They're making it so much harder on themselves. They're getting in their own way, because that's the one thing about the offense is when you look at their DVOA, when you look at a lot of their statistics, like, they are atop the league in most of those categories, and they really have been all year, but they're having to settle for too many field goals because of penalties. Like, again, it's not all on the players. A lot of it is on the coaching. But some of these turnovers, like as A.J. Brown said this year in his press conference a couple days ago, which was a great press conference, by the way, that I think could really turn around this season. I think it helped a lot the vibes of that locker room. AJ said it too, like, the players, they have to be accountable. They've made a lot of mistakes this year. Jalen Hurts has made a lot of mistakes. The offensive line, Jason Kelce, has made a lot of mistakes this year. Players are putting the football on the ground. They're just not making the right decisions. They have to get out of their own way. It's why they've allowed bad teams to stay in these football games and a lot of the times beat you. So that's one thing, too, that has to stop. Like, you cannot go on the road. If you're going to win 3 road games to get to the Super Bowl, you cannot have a negative turnover differential. Number 3 on offense, one thing that needs to happen, I think that the run game needs to be dominant again when you choose to dial it up. I'm not saying become a run-heavy, run-first team again. I'm not saying do that like you were in 2021, but when you choose to run, they need to, from an efficiency standpoint, look like the 2021 and 2022 run game. Because I think part of how you're going to maintain these leads against good teams, how you're going to keep this Eagles' really bad defense off the football field, how you're going to limit turnovers, is by being balanced, is by having that ground game. You need those 8 to 10 play drives where you chew up, 7 to 8 minutes of clock, keep the other offense off the field. It demoralizes the defense. I think it really builds confidence in the offensive line. It gets them going, right? It's like once you just hit that first 3 in a basketball game, that's when, the dam breaks. And I think that's what happens when the Eagles' run game gets going. It just gives everybody in the offense a huge boost. And that can open up the deep ball game as well, can open up the play action. You need to get the run game going. Hopefully Jalen Hurts looks healthy and he can be a big part of that. I'm not saying, again, they need to be a run-heavy team, but they need to be dominant in the run game when they choose to dial it up. So those are, to me, the 3 things on offense that you've got to see in the postseason. Jalen Hurts has to be special, and honestly, the entire offensive personnel, because like I said, you're going to have to win probably a lot of shootouts. Number 2, the turnovers and penalties, they've got to stop. Number 3, you need the run game to be dominant when it is dialed up. The bigger issues, though, are on defense. That's where I have a lot less faith when it comes time for the postseason. What needs to happen on defense? We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same questions. What is the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. When I was a sports director at a local radio station, I needed to build a good team around me. There was a lot to produce: live shows on the radio, game broadcasts, a podcast network. There was a lot going on. LinkedIn Jobs helped me find the qualified candidates faster. They're not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than a billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. They know that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have time or resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, want to let you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, so I want to get into now 3 things I think that have to happen on defense for the Philadelphia Eagles to make a run in the playoffs. Again, the odds are going to be stacked against them. They are likely, unless they win on Sunday and the Cowboys lose to the Commanders, the Eagles are likely the 5 seed in the wild card. They're going to have to win 3 road games to get back to the Super Bowl for the second straight year. So on offense, again, I talked about Jalen Hurts needs to be special. The turnovers got to stop. You got to be balanced. The run game needs to get back on track. And I think the run games looked a lot better the last 2 games against the Giants and the Cardinals as opposed to the other matchups in December. So I think that's a good sign that it could be bouncing back. DeAndre Swift has definitely looked a lot better. On defense, though, again, like on offense, the coaching is a huge problem, and so are the mistakes. But I trust that Jalen Hurts is going to make plays. Like even last game, they scored over 30 points. They have done that the majority of the year. I know A.J. Brown's going to make plays. Dallas Goedert, Jason Kelsey, and Lane Johnson's going to be ready to go. And Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, Cam Jurgens. Like they have the personnel on offense. On defense, it's like when you play the 49ers, when you play the Cowboys, do you trust these guys? It's going to be, again, I'm not expecting them to have any sort of elite performances in the playoffs. The defense, I think, just needs to be something that you can win with or not lose because of. They just got to stay out of the way and just make a few key stops, right? Again, the offense, if you're only scoring 20 points in a playoff game, you're likely not going to win. You're going to be going home. So I'm not asking for just this huge turnaround from the defense, but here are some things that definitely got to happen. Number 1, the pass rush has to come back to a certain degree. I mean, it's been completely non-existent over the last month. Jalen Carter has to get past the rookie wall and be special. Whether it's fair or not to put the kind of pressure on him for a rookie, he is a top 10 talent in the draft that's going to win Rookie of the Year. They are expecting him right now to be their Javon Hargrave because it's not fair to ask Fletcher Cox to be that. He's not that guy anymore. He's still a good player that can give you some meaningful plays every week, but he can't be the guy that carries you. Neither can Brandon Graham. The guys that are young and in their prime, those are the ones that have to step up. Jalen Carter, you need your 2 guys in your prime on the edge to be a lot better. Hassan Reddick's been pretty consistent. I think for Reddick, it's more the coaches need to stop putting him in coverage, but Josh Sweat has to wake up. He was listed as a Pro Bowl alternate, funny enough, but the guy hasn't had a sack in 2 months. Josh Sweat has to wake up. Hassan Reddick, Jalen Carter, that big 3, Carter, Sweat, Reddick, they have got to get to the quarterback, and not just get to the quarterback, because the Eagles, they have a pretty high win rate when it comes to pass rush, but they are so bad at generating that pressure into sacks. They are one of the worst teams in the league at doing that. And so they need to get not just to the quarterback, but when it comes down to all these mobile quarterbacks in the NFL, like you have to, getting pressure isn't enough. You got to get them, as hard as it is, to the ground. And you need them to be special in the fourth quarter. That's one thing the first half of the year. When this defense was good, it was because in the fourth quarter, that's when the defensive line really woke up. It's really when they made plays. Against the Patriots, I'm thinking of both Washington games. There were some huge sacks from Sweat and Reddick. Against the Los Angeles Rams, like they need to be special in the fourth quarter. And then I think you need some quality snaps from Nolan Smith. And I don't think you can expect Jordan Davis to get to the quarterback, but he needs to at least be a dominant run stopper. Like that defensive line, again, the second and third level of the defense, they are what they are. They're not going to carry you. This pass rush, this defensive line, I should say with the run game too, because they've not been good lately stopping the run. They need to get back to who they were in the first half of the year. I know they're completely gassed, trying to carry that second and third unit of the defense, but they've got to do it, or else this team's going to have absolutely no shot. Number two, if you're going to give up yards and points, which this Eagles defense, I think it's all but certain they're going to, even in the wild card round, I could see Baker Mayfield having a lot of success, or Derek Carr, probably not Taylor Heineke if it's Atlanta, but Tampa or New Orleans, like they're probably going to be able to throw the football on you, right? I think that's going to happen. So if that is going to happen, you need to get some turnovers. Like you need to close the gap from this turnover differential, which is right now at a -7 on the year for the Eagles. You're only 25th in takeaways. You're 27th in interceptions. And again, I know Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's not walking through those doors at the NovaCare complex, but can Darius Slay get a big interception in one of these games? Can Avonte Maddox or Reed Blankenship or Kevin Byard? Like, yeah, these guys aren't as good as last year, but they're not scrubs. Like, can the defensive line rally to the ball and force fumbles like they were the first half of the year, where against Tampa Bay, Jalen Carter is Falco punching the ball out of Rashad White's hands? Like, that's, against Minnesota, you have, 5 forced fumbles against the Vikings? That's what you got to do. Like, if you're going to be a bad defense that gives up yards, at least be opportunistic and get the ball back to the offense at some point. Again, you just need to make – it's crazy we're at this point with this team already, but I just need them to make a few stops each game. Like, just get off the field a couple times on third down. And then, again, the offense it's asking a lot of the offense, but they're going to have to score 30+. So the defense just, again, they're going to give up yards. They're going to give up points. You got to get some turnovers. You have to get some turnovers. Number 3, this is something people are not talking about a lot. They really need Zach Cunningham back, like really bad. And the good news is he was a full participant today in the Eagles Friday practice, because he honestly, and it's sad that a street level linebacker that you signed in August is the glue of that position, but it's true. Zach Cunningham was your best coverage linebacker. He was your best linebacker against the run. And Nicholas Morrow's made some plays this year, and Shaq Leonard has had a couple of moments since he's been signed, but overall, those guys are a massive liability in coverage. And Ben Van Sumeren, you can't ask that guy to be a huge part of this defense in the postseason. Zach Cunningham is one of the keys to this defense in the playoffs. He is a top 3 thing that needs to play well. He's one of the guys that has to play well in the playoffs if the Eagles have any shot. Again, it's much more challenging to overcome what the defense is dealing with than the offense, but I think those are 3 things you got to do. Again, the pass rush has got to wake up. You got to be opportunistic, and I think they really need Zach Cunningham back into this lineup. Luckily, it looks like that will happen for the playoffs. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. Coming up next, LOE 3 presented by FanDuel. 3 player props that I'm riding on for Eagles and Giants. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. I think that's something that I've thought about a lot. I had a lot of New Year's resolutions, and I'm like, these are extreme. Am I going to stick to these, or should I just try to build on what I was actually doing, especially through therapy in 2023, and try to make real change, right? Maybe you finally organize one part of your space, or you want to tackle another one of those. Maybe you're taking your supplements every morning, and now you want to actually eat breakfast too. Things that you've been working on already. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And I've been doing therapy now through BetterHelp for 3 years, and I've switched for multiple therapists to find the right one, and they do that anytime for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOn to get 10% off your first month of online therapy. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. The way we always do, one final LOE3 for the 2023 season, and as always, it is presented by FanDuel. So, and again, we'll see what happens here. Like, take these bets with a grain of salt because I'm not 100% sure that the Eagles are going to play their starters. It depends on what happens with Cowboys and the Commanders, but I think at least for a half, you're going to have Jalen Hurts playing. You're going to have the starters out there because they're not playing good football right now. Even if you don't have a shot at winning the division, like, you need this team to be playing some good football to build some confidence heading into the playoffs. So here are 3 bets that I'm riding with. Right now, my unit shares, I'm at plus 0.61, so I'm trying to stay in the positives for the year. I do have a losing record at 20-25, but I have not lost you money. Unlike Gino, sorry to call him out when he's not on the show, but I have not lost you money this year, and I'm trying to finish off the year on that positive note. So here are 3 player props I'm betting on and overall bets for Eagles-Giants. Number 1, I'm going to take the under on that 41.5 total points in MetLife. It looks like it's going to snow. The weather is not going to be great. Again, maybe the Eagles play backups. The Giants have very little to play for. They are not a very talented offense. Tyrod Taylor is going to be the quarterback in this game. I can't imagine, like, do the Eagles score 30 and then the Giants score over 10? I don't know. I think this game's probably like a 24-13 type of ball game, and I think it'll be close to that 41.5. That's a pretty good line, but I'm going to bet safe here, and I'm going to take the under. It's never fun to bet the under. I think you always want to bet for points, but I think that's going to be the under at 41.5. And then I've got 2 anytime touchdowns to wrap up the show. One, again, I'm going to go safe. I'm going to go really safe with this final week, and I'm sorry about that. I'm going to go really conservative, but it is week 18. I'm trying to stay in the positives. Jalen Hurts, anytime touchdown. That has been the go-to Eagles bet this year. Plus 110. I think it's plus, it always is, but with Jalen, a lot of the times it's been like the number 1 bet to take for an Eagles game because he normally always scores a rushing touchdown. He broke the single season record this year for quarterback rushing touchdowns, but it's at plus 110. I like those odds. I think, again, with the weather, you're going to run the football. Give me Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown, and because of that same logic, DeAndre Swift anytime touchdown at plus 185. This one's a little riskier. He was a limited participant on Friday with an illness. And the dude, it feels like he always falls down at like the 3, 2, or 1 yard line, and Jalen Hurts punches the football in. But I like the way Swift is running the football the last few weeks. He did score against the Giants last time. I think they're going to want to run the football. I think DeAndre Swift will get in the end zone. Plus 185. LOE3 always presented by FanDuel. 3 player props to take for Eagles and Giants. That's going to do it, guys, for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us a part of your day, your first listen each and every day. Signing off. We'll see you on Sunday after the game for our post-game show. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.